what would be your proposed solutions to improve physicians' awareness and understanding of the role of nicotine in tobacco harm reduction? Along with another question I had really bubbling in my mind about what kind of partnerships or collaborations do we need to have, not just with physicians and other researchers and communities, but also beyond physicians. So in the general public, who do we need to partner? Jed?
Yeah, well, on the first part of that question, I mean, I'm just thinking more about, it's more than the usual sort of approach of presenting information in an interesting way, right? Because there is this counter force that has already implanted mythology into the smoker's brain that needs to be somehow rooted out. And so just as an analogy, for example, there's an anti-vaxxer movement, people who are against vaccines. And recently I was talking with someone who was pointing out the supposed dangers of the COVID-19 vaccine because we haven't studied the long-term consequences of the COVID vaccine. Well, of course, the clinical trials, of many thousands of people show a 90% reduction in death rate from COVID when people receive active vaccine versus placebo vaccine. Well, by analogy, people say with e-cigarettes, well, we haven't studied the long-term effects of e-cigarettes. And yet again, in the Cochrane review, the clinical trials show a clear advantage. So it almost takes, a real discussion and maybe parallels because everybody has heard these arguments that there exist toxins in e-cigarettes. Well, of course, there exist toxins in everything. If you look hard enough, you will find toxins in your, everything you touch. So it's almost a broader education that is required than simply presenting information, because it's almost how to think about your world and evaluating evidence and seeing the parallels between this situation of nicotine use and other situations in medicine where people accept, certain conclusions that vaccines are good, even if we don't know the long-term, all the long-term data 10, 20 years from now, we have enough evidence now to justify their use. Trying to teach, it's really a training in how to evaluate evidence and avoid being, in a sense, susceptible to distortions by highly motivated anti-groups. And that's a real challenge. So I think the training is got to be very specialized training in how to look at evidence and not just sort of the simple presentation of facts. In terms of the modality for reaching the physicians, I'm not a physician. So I would defer to Ricardo and you and other physicians about the best conduits to the communication process.